Welcome to Night Shadows. I'm Stuart Best, where the paranormal is normal, where that which you thought you knew, you didn't, and where the future can be known if you know exactly where to look.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thanks for tuning in and listening. We have Larry, obviously, with us, as this is a Best Taylor update. Hi, Larry. How you doing?
Oh, doing good. Thanks for having me, Stuart.
Well, thanks for coming on and sharing your info. Why don't we start out with something that may turn into a real can of worms, especially for the Clintons, and that's that Seth Rich murder. And it seems to be taking a new turn from what I hear on Fox and other places. What's your take on that? They said something about a Wikileaks connection, and that Assange had even offered a reward to find a killer. Why would he do that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, right after, of course, I've listened to some of the Assange on Hannity and Tucker Carlson and some of the other Fox programs. Assange totally agreed that this Rich guy was one of the leakers to his Wikileaks program on, the Clinton emails, the Podesta emails, the DNC stuff. And, of course, this guy was found shot to death, and they said, must have been a robbery. But now they've got a retired investigator working on the case who has uncovered that not only was it not a robbery because nothing was missing, the only thing they have found that has now come up missing is the laptop and computer items of the deceased. So Washington, D.C. doesn't know what happened to that stuff. They don't know. They don't have any details. The investigator was approached by a D.C. investigator, and I believe also an FBI agent, saying that this was handed off. This case of the murder of this Rich was handed off upstairs. So, more and more is coming out in this. And it appears, though, instead of Russia, appears that this DNC individual tied into the Clintons leaked this information to WikiLeaks. Oh, wow. Boy, just think of all the sadness that'll bring on the left.
Well, it's kind of interesting, too, that if this was handed off to the FBI, that means Comey knew about it, and they're very good at covering up stuff. And Comey, I don't care what anybody says, he was in the Clintons' pocket. And he'd been in that pocket for a long time. Yeah, go ahead.
Wait a minute, Stuart. This was not handed off to the FBI. The FBI agent that was interviewed by the investigator now that's digging into it for the family says that he knew about it and he gave information. It was handed off above the FBI. And the question is, was that Secret Service it was handed off to? If it was, why was Secret Service involved? Was it because of the Clintons? Was it because of Obama and those in the White House? And where is the data? So you've got to remember, this was not a murder that occurred during Trump's administration. This was during the Obama administration.
Yes, and this was during the election heating up.
Yes.
In the early parts of it, as I understand it, right?
That's correct, and this was when the information began to leak out at the end of the election there on Clinton and on the Clinton Foundation and on Podesta and the other ones.
So if it wasn't handed up to the FBI but somewhat higher, the only higher would be either Obama or the Justice Department itself, which be Loretta Lynch, who would obviously quench or destroy or whatever they had to do to keep that totally secret. Or, like you said, Secret Service. And obviously somebody ordered a hit. So can we guess who might have done that? Seeing as how it was damaging to the Clintons and especially to Hillary, all that stuff. And Pedogate, I mean, they've murdered a lot of people over this Pedogate. I was looking at Richard Shaw, said something about 3,000 people globally have been rounded up on the pedophile cases so far. I haven't heard a word about that in the media. How come that's not being recorded?
Well, they're too busy, Stuart, with Trump and Russia. They're going after Trump and they're going after Russia. And I think part of it really is about the pedo. They're trying to stop this arrest and this investigation into the pedophile rings that have been raging through Washington, D.C. for many years. And, of course, I wouldn't say that the Clintons were involved. But, Stuart, what is so interesting is there seems to be a massive takeout against Trump right now because of his trip to the Middle East.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing. And I'm of course, being of a conspiratorial mind, I'm just wondering also if the reason they want that stopped is they don't want this Israel thing to come to pass, this embassy move and the capital move into Jerusalem out of Tel Aviv, because that most likely would create a war, and a war would bring in the Temple Mount. And I read somewhere where the Sanhedrin had written another letter to Clinton. Did you see that one? And they want him to intervene and get something started.
Are you talking? You don't mean Clinton, do you? Don't you mean Putin or Trump?
Yeah, Putin. I'm sorry. Yeah, Israel went to Putin, and I think they went to Trump.
Yeah, they went to both, actually.
So that may be one of the reasons he's over there. It'll be interesting. Now, he's going to be, you said something about he'll be up by the Temple Mount or something on 11/11.
Yeah, he's going directly to, he'll be standing on the Temple Mount. He is going on to the Muslim area of the Temple Mount. And Tom Horn actually put out a post today, an alert, saying that the Sanhedrin has now given permission to Trump and asked that when he's standing on the Temple Mount itself, I guess the Muslim portion, that he call out or beseech God or the Creator to immediately send the Messiah, i.e. Antichrist, now, immediately, that it's time now. And so this is really a very timely thing. He's going over there May the 22nd, which is, as I've said before, that's 11/11, basically. That's the 22nd is 2 11s. And
yes.
But he's going first quickly. He leaves Friday. Actually, him and Mattis leaves Friday to go to Saudi Arabia for meetings in Saudi Arabia, and then he's going to Israel and have meetings with Netanyahu, the Temple Mount thing, et cetera, and Abbas, and then he leaves there and has a meeting with NATO and the Vatican. So it's a very, very important trip, and there's been everything in the world trying to stop him and stall him from making this trip. Now, let me ask you a question. When I was on the Mailbag show with Augusto Perez, he brought something up really interesting. He said he'd been reading in Daniel 2, chapter 2, verse 21, and it's talking about, matter of fact, verse 20 says, Daniel answered, "Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his." And number 21, he changes the times and the seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding, tied in with Daniel 4:35. So Augusto, and I'd like your opinion on this. Augusto said that he really, truly believed that because so many people had prophetically given utterance and for a number of years, actually, that Obama was the last president of the United States, and actually the 44th would be the last presidency of this nation, and some people claimed they even saw houses, and there was only 44 houses in America, and it was over. And so he said he believes, that Augusto believes, if I'm saying this right, that God literally changed the timeline and inserted at a critical hour a Trump presidency of the 45th president that should never have been, just like he put Mary in the begats. It's a spiritual, it goes against the direction of anything. It goes against everything, actually. And so I wanted to read that real quick and get your opinion. What do you think? Do you believe possibly there's been a timeline change for a Trump presidency, whether it lasts long or not?
Yeah, I think there probably has been. When this first started, we talked about the Cyrus effect and how Cyrus affected Babylon in a very bad way. And we made mention of the fact that Trump not only was a Cyrus effect, most likely, but also judgment. And the Lord, of course, can do anything he wants. And then you have the Antichrist comment of he thinks to change times and laws. So that comment in Daniel 2, where it says he thinks that he changes times and seasons, we saw the change in 2015 with that sandstorm in Israel that delayed Feast of Trumpets for 2 days, which we now know was probably, or very, very likely, let's put it that way, 2 years, changing the time. And he's changing the season. Seasons generally refers back to the feast days of the Lord, which he did. He changed the season. He changed the time by that divine sandstorm. So we could say that this whole thing has been a 2-year delay, of which Trump is part of that delay. Yeah, I would agree with that.
So anyway, the Sanhedrin now, according to Tom Horn, and I think you saw that link. I posted it today. He says,
yes.
Will Trump do it? He says the Sanhedrin says Donald Trump must stand on the Temple Mount and beseech God to bring the Messiah, Antichrist, now that it is time. And so anyway, that's kind of an interesting question as far as, because Trump now, even though some are raging that he shouldn't leave with his presidency under attack in America at the moment and go overseas for that trip, he's going anyway. He's leaving day after tomorrow, Friday, with Mattis, and the trip begins, and we're looking at like the 1st, 2nd, 23rd, and 24th, I guess, this trip comes up, and it's all dramatic. I mean, even the Vatican meeting. This is very, very important, and people should pay close attention.
Oh, I read an article where it said something about where Trump was going to set up some sort of an Arab NATO, or try to, or lay out the plans for it.
That's what I was listening to on Fox just a little earlier. They were bringing out the information about that Trump had a new plan that had never been thought of before in developing an Arab NATO to handle the Middle East. And as a matter of fact, I talked to a couple of friends. They're Israelis today. I met them today out while I was out running around, and I asked them, and I said, what do you think Trump's going to do on his trip? And they said, well, he's going to turn the Middle East upside down. And then I also asked them, I said, well, what do you think, what's his connection with Israel? And they said, well, it appears that he's arming Israel to fight Iran.
Which would make sense, because Israel has to be well fortified if they're going to attack Iran, and eventually they will, because they were trying to get Obama to kind of do that, and I remember somehow where they were even short-stopping Israeli jets there for a while under Obama to prevent attacks on Syria and Iran and stuff like that. Do you remember that, when they were more or less saying, we'll shoot you down if we find you? Go ahead.
Yeah, but do you remember the minute Trump entered office, there was already F-35 basically on the way to Israel, and now I know they've got at least 5, maybe more, and those are stealth fighter bombers. I mean, those planes, that's the top of the line, and Israel already has a number of them. And also there's been reports, and it's not secret reports, it's just not noted much, that millions and millions of dollars of armaments have been sent. So Trump, the day he was inaugurated, things were already in motion in the Middle East. People just didn't know it.
Well, it's also interesting, the first stop he's making is Saudi Arabia, which is where Stan pinpointed that alien UFO base, or kind of an area of 51, but maybe more advanced.
Yeah, it's close to Riyadh. It's pretty, in that area.
And isn't that the area where that Ark of Gabriel came from? Somewhere in that area? And the Russians came down and picked it up and took it to Antarctica.
I think it's the same region there. It's pretty close. All that area right there is it's ancient, extremely ancient, and as Stan Deyo says, it's even ancient to the Nephilim and fallen angels.
So some things appear to be kind of connecting here. And we just have to, everybody should really watch, folks. You want to really watch what comes out of all this, not only here in the States and all the cries for impeachment and all of that, but more about what he does when he gets to Saudi Arabia, what he does when he gets to Israel, and how the Pope handles this thing, and how he handles the Pope. This is going to be very, very telling. And lest we forget, which we shouldn't, in 2015, remember on 9/23, 2015, at 9:23 in Washington a.m., the Pope and Obama shook hands. And I believe they sincerely believed they were starting this whole thing back then, and I think the Lord said, as he thinks to change times, I think the Lord just said, whoops, sorry about that, guys, but this is the way it's going to go down. And delayed it for 2 years. Then we have to look at that Joseph situation because of what's happening crop-wise. How are they doing down there, kind of drifting off that subject for a minute? How are they doing for planting?
Oh, we're not, Stuart. It's we've had thunderstorms yesterday again, today. They're showing a week ahead of us of storms, and it's nonstop. We're in the middle of we're past the middle of May. We're going towards the 1st of June, and nobody's really, all those that have planted, it's not doing any good because it's so cool, and the nights are so cold up here especially. If we have any crops at all, it'll be a miracle. And remember what the bot said about a middle summer polar vortex, if you could even imagine such a thing?
Yes. Yep, they said that could happen. There was language about it, they said. And of course, when you have language change like that, they can't really pinpoint exactly what it means. But that the polar vortex would come down in the middle of summer or during the summer, more than one, several of them. Well, if you had a polar vortex and you had snow, which is what they claimed, there would be snow in the middle of summer, and that'd wipe out pretty much a good share of the crops. Up here, they're still way, way behind. The fields have got pools of water on them because we've had a lot of thunderstorms. In fact, we just got over one before I went on the air. So, yeah, they can't do anything. Plus, it's cold on top of it. Anyway, here's a headline. Why don't you take? They want to destroy Trump and America. Gregory Marinano, I guess, says America is in conflict with itself. We have a president who gets it. He's obviously not a socialist, and there is no doubt this man has the back of America. There is a literal war going on right now between the political parties here, a deliberate effort by some to destabilize the country, bring America to its knees from the inside. They want to basically throw this country into some kind of third world situation. But I don't think that's going to happen. there are too many people on the opposite side of this trade that want to see America succeed. What's your take on that? Are we biblically, we don't succeed?
Well, I have to repeat again the scriptures that say that we would have healed Babylon, but she would not be healed. And what are we seeing today in America? Everything that Trump is trying to bring to give us progress, to get better, to do better, economy, military, you name it, not only is the left and the Democrats, but also even his Republican people are fighting him nail to nail. I mean, it's incredible. The opposition is they don't want the country healed.
Yeah, exactly. They don't. They want it to go their way. Well, then we just heard they appointed a special prosecutor now. So it'll be interesting what they uncover or not uncover and hide.
What is kind of interesting, too, is, I know you've done some dating and watching, and you actually had an article up, talking about the numbers game in 57-77, and they appointed Robert Mueller as the new counsel from the Justice Department to run the FBI probe, a special probe into Trump and the Russia connection. And that disturbed me considerably. And from a lot of the insiders I've been listening to on Fox today, they say this is literally right out of the deep state. This is from the deep state. But I'll tell you something. I can't tell people I know anything because I don't. But when I was walking down before the show and I was praying about that, and I was wondering how Trump is going to come out and handle this situation because he's got to go immediately, almost overseas. It was like I felt an unction, maybe from heaven, maybe not, maybe I ate too much, but it was like by chance, if there's an intervention from heaven, this may open up and reveal more than they planned on seeing. This may go deeper than they expected it to go, and it may bypass Trump and maybe go where the Lord wants to, and maybe the corrupt and rot will pour out like crazy.
Well, the Lord did say he was going to uncover all that which was hidden. And we've been watching that happen in spite of all the opposition from the communists, which is what they are. And what we're watching is a communist coup, a communist incursion, whatever you want to call it. And I've often thought that a lot of the American people, in fact, probably the vast majority, even though they may be conservative, are in fact part of the Communist Manifesto, the 45 points to take a nation which they have accepted. It's been introduced so slow, they don't realize it. But I remember on July 4th, I wrote an article, Independence from What, or something. I can't remember what I called it. But we're already enslaved, and we're already deep into a socialist government. And I think maybe you're right. I think the Lord delayed this temporarily, like he delayed the sandstorm, delayed the Feast of Trumpets for 2 days. I think that is actually a pointer to where we are now, and we are closing in. I'm not sure there's going to be any more delay now. What's your take on that? It looks like it's moving too fast.
Well, that's one of the things that they were talking about on Fox a little earlier was the fact that they were saying that if this kicked into, this seems to be a hybrid connection, and it's odd that they use that term, this Mueller coming back in and a counsel from the DOJ over the FBI investigation, et cetera, and doing this. It's a hybrid situation, they say. But they're talking about, if possible, that it could speed up, and they're talking maybe this thing will really reveal things. And they were saying July or August that there'll be definitions spelled out. And so it time frames in a little bit with what you were talking about, that B2 Av, feast day or whatever, yes, and the time frame you've been talking about.
Well, it does seem interesting that everything is starting to come unglued, and it's almost like the government can't function properly, as is in Isaiah. He talks about that. Before we go, though, we only got 5 minutes left. Did you see this? British issues a terrorism warning for Antarctica. Security experts aren't very impressed. Steve Quayle says this is a coded alert to their operatives in Antarctica. What would be your take? Is this part of the chasing the cloud eaters, the giants that are down there wandering around?
It would sound like to me, I don't know of any ISIS folks that really like ice,
Yes,
but,
exactly.
But it sounds like to me it would be a coded message about an outbreak of something already in Antarctica, possibly. And I doubt if the terrorism, maybe cannibalism.
That could be. Well, they are cannibals, I guess, these big ones. Maybe this is all getting very, very strange down there. And but here's another one, a huge, and I think this is a gamma ray burst, a huge wave anomaly is coming from Antarctica, but nobody knows how it is formed. And this is the second one. And
well, you remember? You
Yeah,
remember a few weeks ago they were talking about strange signals and frequencies coming out of Antarctica, and was wondering where it was coming from and why and who. And maybe now we know even more. I wonder almost, Stuart, if maybe they have found an ancient CERN under Antarctica that is used to open gateways, and they're trying to activate it.
That's what I was thinking. That would be this is some sort of advanced technology.
Well, you remember, Stuart? You remember the most recent post out of CERN actually had information that they had located the site of an ancient, massive super collider on Mars. Now, what did they mean by that? Maybe it was Antarctica.
I think. Well, yeah. There's a tie between the Earth and Mars. There's no question about it. Maybe it's ancient. Who knows? One more thing before we have to close down. Cosmic rays are intensifying. Many people think solar minimum is boring. Wrong. During the sunspot cycle, the entire heliosphere changes its personality, and they're proving now that radiation spikes are increasing every month practically.
Wow.
And we're having all this kind of weird behavior of people. So it does make you wonder, doesn't it?
It does.
And the other thing we've got here is kind of interesting. I want to pass it along. Secret Space Program update. TR-3B patent is now in the public domain. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So
hey,
the guy who
Stuart,
patented yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to mention, I know we're almost out of time, but we might remind people that Richard Shaw will be on Friday night's show, so they may want to tune in.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a great show. He's got some very interesting new insider information, so by all means, everybody, if you can, check in with us on the show, because that's going to be a really special one. He's been digging into a lot of different things, and he digs into a lot of, what could we say, very interesting things. So that's going to be a good one. Anything else you want to say, Larry?
Oh, that's it. Yeah, just people to be aware of what's going on. Things are changing quickly.
Yeah, they are. Heads up, folks, and thanks for listening. We'll see you on Friday.